I think it can be so empowering too to realize that you're capable of making yourself feel good. You don't have to rely on somebody else. You get to, and it can be additive, but
Mm.
it's not necessary for you to feel good.
I'm Rachel, and you're listening to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. We have the Dr. Aly Ash back on. Dr. Aly Ash, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you so much. I always love chatting with you.
Yes, I was very happy to get your email again. Like, hey, I want to come back on the show. Let's do this. You have such like so many things to offer and so many conversations. Our podcast on ruptures in a relationship was yeah, definitely a banger of an episode. I share that one so often with people. And so
Hmm.
um
Thanks for that.
yeah, of course. And then that like leads us right into this conversation today of how do we handle breakups with grace and class and power and all of the things that, are ideal if breakups.
Yeah, and also embracing everything about breakups that can feel hard and messy because even when breakups are right, they are rarely easy.
Yes, yeah. It can, yeah,
Yeah.
like it just comes, there's so much emotion, like it's just so emotionally charged, all those moments, the memories, all the things. And so for in your take, like why do you think that they impact people so deeply?
Well, when we think about it on a nervous system physiological level, right? Hormonally, our body is experiencing a lot of withdrawal of oxytocin and dopamine and other chemicals that we really can rely on to feel good and to feel regulated. Um, Attachment also lives in the nervous system, and breakups trigger attachment systems, right? There's a lot of fear and heartache around that loss of your familiar, your connection, your safe place, and it can feel very scary. And of course, there's also not just as you were saying, the feeling of loss of all the special times that you shared, but also so intense is the future that you imagined in your head. And you're not just breaking up with this person, you're breaking up with that future you thought you were moving towards, which can be really hard. And then, of course, there's also just those narratives that we have in our society that a breakup is a failure, or that if you really loved each other enough, you would conquer everything and you would make it work. And that can make letting go even harder. And the uncertainty of will I love again? Am I losing my shot at love? I often say that we prefer the certainty of misery over the misery of uncertainty.
I like that. Yeah. I would agree with
And
that.
totally, I've done that in much of my life because when you're breaking up, especially if you're the one that's choosing to end a relationship, you're having to trust the unknown.
Mhm.
And that requires a lot of faith and resolve and self-love to say, I love myself and self enough to say no to this thing, because I'd rather be with myself than be in a relationship that isn't serving me or us any longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think to add to that too, it's like thinking back to previous breakups, I had felt a lot of sadness around losing the people that were also attached to that partner. So like in a high school relationship, I was very connected with his family. And so not being a part of their family gatherings anymore, or the kids that were in that family, or the friends that came with that partnership. Um, yeah, there was just like I think that just added to the grief of the breakup even.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that in. That's very true. And, navigating the complexities of how breakups ripple through communities can feel really hard and scary.
Yeah. I like
Mhm.
that. Yeah, you touched on like it feels like this failure in a sense. I was just having a conversation. Danny Morell was one of our leaders on a coaching call recently, and I really like his work, and he was saying like when a breakup happens or when you choose to lose that relationship, like having that moment of thankfulness, like thanking that person, like thank you for showing me, like showing that this is what was meant for me, or this was what was not meant for me in a way even. Like it's almost like allowing yourself to level up to the next thing. I guess in the sense of like you're maybe the one doing, I guess either if you're doing the one breaking up or not, even.
Either way, and one of the things I'd love to talk about today is how do we process breakups and how do we glean the learnings and the insights from those relationships and experiences? Because I think when we can do that, just as your coach was saying or your guest was saying, we know more about what we need to be different
Hmm.
and we know more about what we don't want to do without. And you can take both of those and use that to inform who you want to partner with next. Ideally, every relationship should be better than the one before because you are up leveling.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's like it's a time to take inventory of like, okay, here's what I liked from this relationship. Here's what I want to call in or do better in the next relationship. I also think internal reflection of like how could I have showed up differently or better as a person. But yeah, definitely I'd love like from that more trauma-informed lens, like how can somebody begin to navigate that heartbreak without, re-traumatizing themselves in a way?
Well, I think that there's different stages. When a breakup happens, there is the grief process. And I think a lot of this reflection that we're talking about needs some space and perspective.
Hmm.
So when somebody's going through a breakup, I think what's most important is to be with the grief, to be with the fact that it's not linear and that it's going to come up in these cycles of all sorts of emotions, right? Grief comes with other things like anger and sadness and self-doubt and everything else. And it's so important to let yourself feel it because if you try to bypass that too quickly, um, you're suppressing that suffering and that pain, and it actually doesn't just go away. It will creep up in other ways, in other times, in other places, and I think that that's actually part of learning is to let yourself feel the fullness of what was and how you're feeling now to make space for what might come in next. And part of the grief is also those losses of the shared routines and the identity that you might have had in that relationship and that physical closeness. And I think because of that lack of dopamine and oxytocin that we get when we're in relationships, it's really important to engage in a lot of self-care practices, co-regulate, meaning connect with your friends and family and have lots of cuddles and laughter and play, all sorts of ways that you can feel soothed in connection with other people. Make sure to share this with trusted friends. Don't go through it alone. Um, and also maybe some sort of ritualization of the release of the end of the relationship. Maybe it's writing a goodbye letter or doing some sort of cord cutting ceremony. I think all of that can really help prepare for some of the deeper self-reflection, which of course you don't have to do it. There's not a right time to do it, but I do think at least if you're going to do it when you're breaking up, doing it again 3 to 6 months later is really optimal. And so one of the things I offer my clients is a list of questions to support relationship endings. And in some breakups, you might be able to even talk about this with your partner, or your ex, right? Having a scheduled time 3 to 6 months after the breakup to get back together to reflect. But even if the breakup doesn't support that, I think journaling these questions is also incredibly valuable. So things like, what about this relationship wasn't working for you? What are some ways that maybe you contributed to the problems in the relationships? What did you learn? How have you grown? What are some areas you want to focus on moving forward? Anything that you want to apologize or make amends for, or forgiveness that you might be able to offer to the other person.
Mhm.
Really reflecting about the positive times that you shared and the positive wishes and intentions you have for the other person, but also what are your wants and needs and boundaries regarding how you want to relate to them moving forward? And I think that's again a time-based question that may shift in different parts of the breakup process.
Mhm.
And then there might be, if you can do this conversation with somebody else, what are some of the questions that you have or the ways that you might still feel confused or things that you need to address to feel complete?
Mm. Gosh, yeah, I love that. That would be very ideal, I think, for a lot of people, and also just so mature and adult, right? Like, I think so often we hear there again that you named like it's not just grief, there's the anger, there's the rage, there's a heartbreak, there's so many emotions wrapped up in this. And so, for some people listening to this, I just can imagine like there's no way in hell I'm reconnecting with this person like 6 months from now, right? Like, they blindsided me, they wronged me, they cheated on me, right? Like, we hear all kinds of stories, nasty things that have happened. Um,
Hmm.
but For sure. I think that really speaks to the level of like personal development and the work that a person can do to be brave enough to put themselves out there to try to connect in that way. And I'm just
Yeah.
thinking through my breakup before my husband and I got together. My God, that would have saved me so much time if I could have just heard those things from my from my partner. It took me a long time to realize that it wasn't that I was also part of the problem.
Yeah, and again, if it's not a safe or accessible conversation to have with your ex, it's still so worthwhile to do this self-exploration and talk about it with a friend, a coach, a therapist. Get that support so that you can receive some reflection and feel like you're not just spinning out in it by yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you named like the nervous system regulation, like and specifically to be able to lean into the grief. I think oftentimes like these are feelings that we try to pack down or we try to push away or, the phrase like the easiest way to get over somebody else is to get under another person, somebody else,
That's
right?
right.
It's like, yeah, we want to avoid, 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 but really it's the opposite. Like doing the opposite is the actual where the healing happens.
That's right. And if I'm a big fan of uh breakup sex, or not just breakup sex. What's the phrase I'm looking for?
Rebound.
Rebound sex. Thank you. Gosh, I had such a mental freeze right there. But I think that there are some real concerns there because if you are rebounding um, and getting sucked into another relationship, you're very likely to repeat the same dynamics and same mistakes, and you're not yet giving yourself the time to heal, but also the perspective that you need to know, how do I want to do this differently? That might be, how do I want to choose somebody different, but also how do I want to show up in a way that's different? And rebound sex may work really well for some people, and it's not going to work well for other people. And I think that there's ways that you can do that more intentionally and thoughtfully.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. If, I think for like, would you say for the in t attachment terms, like the anxious attachment person, probably not the best for rebound sex?
Yeah, I think it's nerve-wracking for an anxious attachment person because the inclination there is to just try to fill that hole as quickly as possible because it's excruciating and painful on a whole nother level because all of your insecurities about am I lovable? Am I enough? Is am I going to be alone forever? All the abandonment wounds get really triggered and brought up to the surface. But what I can say is if you can safeguard it in ways that is actually really casual, not having repeated sex with the same person, not doing overnights, not doing the kinds of things that are going to have you start to develop feels, you know, again, there's no one right way, but I do really advise a lot of caution. And that's true for anybody, regardless of their attachment styles, because um it's an opiate, it's a balm for the heartache, which, I think whether it's rebound sex or binge watching Netflix or diving headfirst into work or whatever it is, these distractions are, I think, okay in moderation because it's a lot to be with, and it's okay to give your system breaks, and it's okay to um, take it in doses, but you have to be doing it in doses rather than just ignoring it altogether.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, very, very well said. Um, before we get into kind of the aftermath of it, I would like to ask like how does a person know that it's time to break up in a relationship? I know you have probably a lot to say in this area.
This is by far one of the biggest questions I get from folks who are having conflict in relationships. And one of the things I really advise my clients to do before they get into a relationship is to complete what I call a needs assessment. So I have this document that I give them that has all sorts of needs, some people or attributes or qualities of a relationship some people may need. And I have them rank each one on a scale from 1 to 5. And really looking at what are your fours and fives,
Mhm.
so that you can get clear about what you need. And to help to differentiate between needs and wants, one of the things I tell them is, can you outsource that need to other relationships? Maybe I have a need for adventure, but I have all sorts of friends that I can do adventure sports with or travel or whatever else it is. So I might be bummed if my partner doesn't want to do that with me, but I can meet that need in other ways. I can't outsource communication. It's not like my partner is a crappy communicator. I can just get those needs met elsewhere because you need to be able to communicate in a relationship.
Hmm.
And so getting really clear about what your needs are versus what your wants are, and being non-negotiable about those needs and being really flexible about your wants, I think is really important. Um,
Hmm.
Especially because when that new relationship energy comes, you're flooded with so many chemicals and hormones that your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that is capable of being discerning, gets a lot less active. And so I always say this is writing a letter from your sober self today to your future self who's drunk on NRE.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's really, really important. And then I think when you're in the relationship, some things that are important to consider are, do you feel stuck? Are you two repeating the same patterns, having the same conflicts, the same fights? Is there a lack of growth and positive movement that's happening? I think one of the challenges is that so often, and I've been guilty of this in much of my life in early relationships, we can be with people for the potential of who they could be,
Hmm.
but that's really tricky because if I'm with you for the potential I see you having,
Hmm.
even if you actually have that same vision for growth, I don't know what your timeline and process is going to be like. And that growth is going to be far more meaningful if you're doing it for you rather than doing it for me. And if I'm with you for the potential of who you can be, I'm going to start to treat you like you're not enough because the reality is right now it's not enough for me. But that doesn't mean that you're not enough. And you're very likely to feel that and to internalize that sense of not enoughness, which isn't really fair to you. It's not fair to me and it's not fair to you. So we do want to really be compassionate around the fact that we're all doing growth, that change is possible. Are we seeing that forward momentum and that forward change? But we also really need to be realistic around, is this relationship compatible enough for me right now?
Hmm. Hmm. I think that is so important, especially dating somebody for their potential piece. This came up in a previous recent conversation I was having too, in terms of marriage. Like so often where people are marrying based on the potential of a person. It's like, yeah, we need to love each other in the moment, in the present. Um, and I never, so emotional needs assessment is something that I take clients through as well, generally when they're already in partnership. But I love your idea of actually for single people to do this, to get very clear on what is it that you're calling in, like what is it that's meaningful. I think that that could also make dating so much easier for them as well. It's like it's when you see right the red flag or the green flags essentially, like that it just yeah provides a lot of clarity for a person, it seems.
Yeah, and I have my clients basically write what I call like a declaration or a statement of needs. And it's like, what is the kind of relationship you want to co-create? And when I was dating, I put a version of mine on my dating profile.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really effective. This is the kind of relationship I want to co-create. This is what I'm bringing. This is what I'm looking for in a partner so that we can have this kind of partnership. And my current partner, saw that and responded to it enthusiastically. And it was such a great like a first step in the relationship to know that we're on the same page.
Yeah. Gosh, that's genius. Yeah, I was like, okay, I thought I was going to be sharing this episode as a resource for people that are going through breakups, but I think it's going to be more of like a for everyone, like, hey, let's take inventory. Like, are you actually happy? Are you dating for present or are you dating for potential?
Yeah, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of listeners who are going through a breakup or just went through a breakup. So hearing this is also, I think, helpful for getting that sense of faith and hope and positive momentum that you can have a relationship that does work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think getting back to like the breakup aspect of it, right? It can really feel like you're losing a part of yourself, like you said, that companion, the family, the community, all of that. So how can people begin to reconnect with their identity and that power after a relationship ends?
It's one of the things that I think is really helpful is to realize that when you are moving forward to this predetermined future, we tend to have these blinders on. We're not really seeing things that might fall outside of that vision that you're working towards and moving towards. So when you're in a relationship, you imagine this future, that's what you're moving towards. And when somebody is going through a breakup or, death or a big job loss or any kind of really big transition, those blinders that you have get removed, and you're actually at your most creative potential. You're most fertile. There's something that's really empowering, terrifying, yes, but also empowering. And can you really embrace that sense of openness and that ability to realize there is a loss of this predetermined future that you had for yourself, but what's the gain? And the gain there is so much potential and opportunity. And to realize that your relationship was one pillar in your life, it's not the only one. You
Yeah.
have your work, you have your friendships, you have your family, you have your relationship with yourself and your self-care. There's all of these other aspects of your relationship that really, if you're going through a tumultuous relationship and a tough breakup, have probably been somewhat neglected.
Hmm.
And how can you pull some of that energy and attention that was so consumed with this relationship in and redirect it to other areas of your life that have the potential to be deeply nourishing and empowering?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I know you teach a lot about pleasure and embodiment. So how could somebody reconnecting to their pleasure support this healing for them as well?
Yeah, when we think about pleasure, certainly orgasm, but any kind of pleasure, it's incredibly regulating for the nervous system. And I think that time to explore your body, to get back into your body, to remember that your body can feel good, not just feel the pain of heartache and grief,
Mhm.
to really explore yourself, to slow down the exploration. It's in a lot of ways a physicalization of what's happening emotionally, that slowing down, that exploring yourself, that making space for what is. I think it can be so empowering too to realize that you're capable of making yourself feel good. You don't have to rely on somebody else. You get to, and it can be additive, but
Mhm.
it's not necessary for you to feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say like when you're speaking to the pillars, would you say like most important pillar to focus on would be that relationship with self during this time and pouring back into self?
100%. And I also want to say for a lot of folks, extroverts, anxious attachers, folks who are community oriented, connections and relationships are absolutely essential.
Mm.
And so, this ability to know that you have other people who care about you, who love you, who see you in your wholeness, that can be really reassuring. And for folks who I personally am better at co-regulating than I am at self-soothing. I need to learn how to self-soothe, and it's a practice of mine and a commitment to do that. And actually, part of my self-care practice is knowing that I have a bunch of people that I can go to regulate in community and in connection. So I would say it's a balancing act between doing both. And I have so many friends. In fact, I have a very good girlfriend who recently went through a breakup. And one of the things she said to me is, my life is beautiful. And I have so many deep, meaningful relationships that matter to me. And why am I putting so much emphasis on this partnership? And in a way that's saying that this is more important than all of these other long, enduring relationships that I've had. And if you're going through a breakup and you don't have a lot of beautiful, long, enduring community and family relationships, like that's actually call to action because sometimes we get so focused and obsessed with our dating relationship that it comes at a cost of investing time and energy elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even that as you were speaking, like for you, like reaching out to the community and friendships, I would even see that as a way. It's like you know yourself, you know what your needs are, and so I would even see that as a way of like pouring back into yourself and to regulating. Um, but yeah,
I
again,
love that reframe. Yeah,
yeah, just take again, I think it's just an opportunity to take inventory of that life. Like what is actually important and what maybe because of a relationship again, especially if this relationship was taking a lot of your energy and right, like fights are happening, arguments are happening, just all of that. Yeah, it's like what were we not nourishing during that time that we can now give back to?
exactly. When you say no to something, you're also creating the opportunity to say yes to something else. And so you're saying a no to this relationship, whether they broke up with you or you broke up with them, when that relationship is ending, that's a door that's closing.
Yeah.
And what other doors are opening up? And I do think it's really important to acknowledge that a lot of people do want to stay friends with their ex.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one of the people that was in my wedding was an ex of mine who is just a dear, dear friend with both me and my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of times when you're going through a breakup, it is important to take some of that time and space so that your attachment system can let go of that relationship as it was, so that you can actually be available to form a new relationship with this new person, a new way of connecting with them that doesn't replay some of those old patterns and dynamics, but also doesn't yearn for and try to contort what is to what was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that you kind of named something important here. There is the reality where like the mutual breakup exists, and then there's reality, right? Like opposite of that. And so, can you speak a little bit about like what the differences are in terms of healing, if any? Again, it's something that you said, love like that reconnection 6 months later, that might not be as easy if that was not, somebody had to go no contact or right, it wasn't amicable. But yeah, what would be some of your thoughts on the differences here?
Sure. And even if it is an amicable breakup, you still might want to have a period of no contact
Hmm.
because that otherwise I find it for some folks, if they're still in a lot of constant contact, they're not able to move on. And
Mm-hmm.
it just prolongs the grief process and that confusion and back and forth and self-doubt. And so sometimes having that period of no contact, even in an amicable breakup, is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself and your ex.
Hmm.
Um, I think that it's really important to assess in the breakup. Are you breaking up because there's some sort of inherent incompatibility? Your shared vision, the futures that you want. Sometimes it's like kids or no kids, or where you want to live, or um, whatever it is. But there's still this level of trust and respect and kindness and compassion. We need those qualities in our relationships, any kind of relationship. And if in that partnership that's ending, there was a lack of respect and celebration and uplifting and love and care, compassion, empathy, then those are not the kinds of folks that you want to have a friendship with.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's probably a relationship that you want to end and let go of and glean the lessons and learnings from, but not continue to invest your energy and effort. Because again, even in a friend dynamic, you're going to be with them for the potential of the friend they could be, not actually are they meeting you in the kind of friendship that you deserve.
Hmm.
Um, but if there are those, I think really that's one of the hardest things of a breakup. It's actually easier if they're a jerk. It's harder if they're a really good human
Hmm.
because it can be scarier to let go of a really good human who's just not really good as a partner for you. But if you can say, okay, we're not really meant to be partners, but I love you. You are such an amazing human. Then knowing that a friendship can be possible for the two of you actually makes it easier to let go of something that's beautiful, just not right.
Hmm. Hmm. And then an extension of this, would you say that there's any differences if you're the one that is doing the breaking up or the one that is getting broken up with?
Yes. So when you're if you're the one that's breaking up with somebody, I think you really want to do it in a kind, caring, compassionate way. What does that mean? Be very clear. Don't lead them on. Don't avoid ambiguity. If you actually want to end things, don't say, let's take a break, right? Be clear, but make sure that you use a lot of those I statements. I realize what I need rather than you don't or you aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really make sure that you focus on needs and fit, not character flaws. You don't want to create those shame spirals. Make sure that you're choosing a setting that feels really safe and supportive so the actual breakup can be helpful. I remember once I had an ex who broke up with me in a car. And when you're going through something that can be really intense on the nervous system. I had a trauma response, not full blown, but when you're going through that kind of nervous system dysregulation, sometimes you have to poop really immediately and really intensely. Like your nervous system is like thinking life or death, fight or flight, evacuate and run. And this was a lovely human. It wasn't a terrible breakup or relationship, but I just so wish he hadn't done it in a car because that was a very uncomfortable experience. So I always share that because I think it's really humanizing and helpful to just hear about. Sometimes these things have really intense impact on your body and your nervous system. So pick a place that's private and calm near a bathroom, distraction free, and not doing it. There's never a right time to break up, but don't do it during a major event or crisis, not right at their birthday or just when their mom died or whatever else it is. Um, and just really kind of hold them with a lot of care and then let them be in the driver's seat a little bit around. I mean, of course, you can have your own boundaries around, do you want to go contact or no contact? How do you want to navigate the splitting up of things and all of that? But as much agency as you can give them, that will be so helpful. And also being really generous. If you have shared community and shared events and shared functions, can you be supportive around them getting to still have access to that? I had somebody break up with me, and he brought me into his community, and he was so committed to me getting to stay friends with them and went the extra step to communicate to them, you don't need to choose. Aly is fantastic. Please maintain your relationships with her. We're on good terms. And that was so generous and really helpful because I didn't feel like the rug was getting ripped out from underneath me. And so, yeah, if you have shared events, maybe offering to let them go, or if you want to split up the event, saying, do you want to do the first half or the second half? So that they can really feel, because when somebody breaks up with you, you feel a loss of control, which is part of what's so traumatizing and scary. So how can you give them a sense of control back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. I'm like recounting all of the breakups in my life as we're having this conversation. Like, where did I go wrong? Where did they go wrong? Where did I go right? Where did they go right? My
That's
last breakup
right. Yep.
actually was, as you're describing it, actually quite better than I maybe experienced it. So, um, yeah, I think that again, yeah, just there's so many patterns, there's so many aha moments that can come with a breakup, and it really I think in full, like it is an opportunity for somebody, as you said, level up. You always hope that your next partner is better, next relationship is better than the previous one.
Yeah, and better for you. I think that's really the important qualifying thing here is, it's just better suited, more compatible for you. And that's also part of why breakups need to happen is you may have been truly compatible, but you're growing and you're changing. And that doesn't always mean that the two of you are going to grow and change in ways that continue to stay aligned and compatible.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if somebody is listening to this, they're in a middle, let's say, of a breakup right now, what is a message that you want them to hear?
Mm.
Mhm.
Um, Breaking up is actually the opposite. It's not the opposite of love. Sometimes the most loving thing that you can do for yourself and the other person is to end a relationship.
Mm.
Relationships oftentimes have a cycle, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the end doesn't mean it's a failure. It means that was the life cycle of that relationship. It's not about forgetting. It's not about just brushing it aside. It's about integrating what you've learned and opening up to love again more consciously, more informed, with greater self-love, greater resources in your life, and greater awareness of what it is that you're wanting to co-create with somebody else. Um, but yeah, and that love doesn't go away. Those beautiful times don't have to be totally thrown out. Like those amazing experiences that you shared helped form who you are, and embrace that.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, like that no to something is a yes for something else. And yeah, hopefully that yes is something better, more fulfilling, more nourishing for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Aly Ash, for coming back onto the show. This was such a nice conversation, and I'm curious, are there any resources or offerings that you have that could support somebody that's in this stage of life?
Yes, absolutely. So my website is TurnOn.love. You can reach out to me for intimacy coaching. I think working with a trauma-informed intimacy coach when you're trying to decide, do I break up, when you're going through a breakup or processing it, or when you're trying to figure out who you want to be partnered with next, is one of the biggest acts of self-love and self-kindness that you can do for yourself. You don't have to go at it alone. And then I have this incredible 2-month online course that starts in January It's also a course that I teach at Stanford University called Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills. And this is a virtual class, but it's live, meaning I'm teaching it. There's all sorts of wonderful breakout rooms where you practice intimacy skills and have really helpful conversations with people who have similar experiences and different experiences, both of which are completely eye-opening. And the recordings are available if you can't attend live. But we go over so many important topics. One of them is picking people and ending relationships, which, by the way, even if you're in a monogamous ongoing partnership, we are ending relationships of all kinds all the time. And we often don't end relationships well because we're not taught how to do that. But then there's also so many topics that will help you either improve the relationship you're in or ready yourself for your next relationship. Things like nervous system regulation and consent and boundaries and empathy and all sorts of skills for deepening emotional connection and flirting and seduction and how do you expand your capacity for giving and receiving pleasure and how do you repair conflict when that happens? I mean, the number of topics in here and the depth that we get to go in a 2-month course is absolutely life-changing. And I think this is the kind of education that really should be standardized for every human in every culture and community. And so right now tickets are super on sale. You get $204 to $400 off or super early bird tickets. It's called, again, Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills. And I'm sure you're going to put the information in the show notes. And of course, I also have a ton of other workshops and content to offer folks. So please don't hesitate to reach out if I can support you in that process.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you have a plethora of options. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll definitely link that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show and yeah, bringing this information to us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for creating this platform. It's such an important resource for folks.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if you really fucking loved it, make sure to tag me on social media at @TheRachelMain. I'll see you next week.